everyone, this is part 2 of my previous video on the chord progression I think every musician should know, the iconic rhythm changes chord progression. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, do check it out, I'll link it below. That's where I introduced the progression and gave a detailed breakdown of the A sections. In this video, we're diving into the B section, and we'll follow the same format as we did before, starting with the basic harmony and then explore ways to reharmonize and expand the chord movements. This will give you more interesting options for both chordal playing and single note lines, and even though this progression is very jazz focused, like I mentioned in the last video, there's so much we can learn from it that can improve all aspects of our musicianship and harmonic awareness, no matter what style of music you play. Just like in part 1, all the examples you hear in the video are written out in detail in a collection of PDFs that analyze the harmony and common substitutions in rhythm changes. Check them out if you want to follow along with the exact voicings and phrases for everything I demonstrate. Let's get into it. So, starting with the basic harmony, the first thing to notice about the B section compared to the A sections is the complete contrast in harmonic rhythm. Instead of having these quick chord changes of 2 chords per bar, we now have 1 chord lasting every 2 bars. So this section can feel like a bit of a breath of fresh air. Unlike the A section, where it sometimes helps to zoom out and simplify your thinking about the chord changes, in the B section we actually have the space to zoom in and expand on each chord. That gives us room to fill out the bar, adding ways on how we can visualize the function of the harmony. In other words, the B section lends itself perfectly to reharmonization techniques that can add more implied chord movement. Let's start by first breaking down the basic chords. Just like in the A section, the harmony is still built on a 1-6-2-5 progression, but here it shows up in the form of what we call backcycling. This refers to a chain of consecutive secondary dominants where each chord acts as a 5 chord, resolving to the next one in the sequence. So each resolution stays dominant and becomes the 5 of the following chord, until it finally resolves to the desired destination, which in this case would be the 1 chord in the key of B flat major. Instead of a 1-6-2-5, we substitute the 1 with the 3, making the progression a 3-6-2-5. D minor, the 3 chord, is an upper structure of B flat major, which is our 1 chord, and it's often used as a common substitution for that 1. But D isn't just the 3 chord, it's also the 5 of the 6 chord G minor. That means we can turn it into a D7, which acts as a secondary dominant that wants to resolve to the 6. This is where backcycling comes in. The 6 chord G minor now becomes a dominant G7 because it functions as the 5 of 2, C minor. Then C minor is made dominant as C7 functions as the 5 of 5, which would be F7. And F7, of course, this is our diatonic 5 chord of the tonic, which finally resolves back to B flat major for the last A section of the form. Okay, so that's the basic layout for this 8-bar B section and the function of each chord. As I mentioned earlier, because we now have 2 bars on each chord, we've got the space to zoom in and expand the harmony. Since each chord is functioning as a dominant 5, a common move is to split that dominant into a 2-5 progression. In the part 1 video, I talked about how a 2-5 can basically be thought of as just a 5, or vice versa. Thinking of a 5 as being split into a 2-5 creates a kind of gradient of tension. You move from the less tense 2 to the more tense 5, which provides a greater tension and stronger pull to want to resolve to its tonic. So for our 8-bar B section, D7 would now become A minor 7 to D7, then we'd get D minor 7 to G7, G minor 7 to C7, and finally C minor 7 to F7. This approach works great for single note lines as well. It's something we can use to help shape our lines and imply more harmonic movement, even when we're just playing over a static dominant chord. Here's a sunny stip phrase that does exactly that. So you can hear how that 2-5 phrase works just as well over a static dominant as it does over a full 2-5 progression. Here's another classic 2-5 phrase using some common bebop techniques. So getting back to other ways we can expand the harmony, since we are thinking of these 8 bars as being split into 4 different 2-5 progressions, we can borrow other diatonic harmony from the respective key of each 2-5, so using diatonic chords from each implied key. For example, A minor 7 to D7 comes from the key of G major, so we can use voicings or passing chords from the diatonic harmony of G major. The same for the other 2-5s too, so D minor 7 to G7 comes from C major, G minor 7 to C7 comes from F major, and finally C minor 7 to F7 takes us back to our home key of B flat major. As well as the diatonic harmony, we can also throw in some diminished passing chords to help with voice leading. Here are some shell voicing examples. Let's do the same thing, but with the harmony expanded into the 2-5 progressions instead of just the static dominant chords. This is using the flat 3 diminished of each key to move from the 2 to the 5. Let's now look at ways we can imply more dominant tension and create smoother voice leading by using tritone substitutions. This is where we replace the bass note of a dominant chord with its tritone or flat 5th interval. I've already been throwing this into some of the earlier examples, but now let's make it more of a featured reharmonization. I already touched on this in part 1, but just to quickly explain, a tritone sub is a common technique used to add tension to a dominant that's functioning as a 5 chord. The tension is created in the bass and encourages voice leading because of the semitone distance to the root of the chord it's resolving to. When you use a tritone sub, it automatically implies the altered scale over that dominant chord because essentially you're just putting the flat 5th, which is the diatonic 5th of the scale, in the bass. When you do this, the voicing actually resembles another dominant chord which is a tritone away, since dominant 7th flat 5 chords are symmetrical. For example, D7 flat 5 shares the same notes as A flat 7 with a flat 5. You can also see this from the perspective of the parent scale, so D altered comes from E flat melodic minor, and when you do the tritone sub and create A flat 7, well, that's now implying A flat Lydian dominant, which is also a mode from that same parent scale of E flat melodic minor. So this can be used to open up more harmonic options for us, and from here we can get experimenting to help generate different voicings for this section of the form. There are lots of ways to get creative with tritone substitutions, and they often open the door to new compositional ideas for the B section. A great example that comes to mind is a song called The Eternal Triangle by Sunny Stitt. Since a tritone substitution gives us a new dominant chord, a tritone away, we can also split that new dominant chord into its own 2-5. This is a really common and creative reharmonization in the style of bebop. Let's try getting creative with tritone substitutions in a more compositional way by reharmonizing one of the tritone subs into a major 7th chord. This is a common technique that adds a temporary sort of modal moment, and a perfect example of this can be heard in the turnaround at the end of Tad Dameron's tune called Ladybird. This can be a really nice way to reharmonize the turnaround. We can also use the tritone sub concept to create interesting and tense or outside single note phrases. Here's a Charlie Parker inspired phrase from Barry Harris. So there are some really cool harmonic techniques we can apply over this B section, all of which can also be used in other styles of music or even in your own creative songwriting. Before wrapping up, I wanted to show a few more chordal examples and phrase ideas from the PDF. These are all written out and analysed there, so you can dive deeper if you want to study them more closely. Here are some examples using an anchor voicing concept to help with voice leading through the chord changes. Here are some other phrase ideas that use various techniques. So that's a breakdown of the B section of rhythm changes. I hope you found it useful and picked up some new concepts to try. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and if you enjoyed this, don't forget to check out part 1 and grab the PDFs. And let me know how you get on with these ideas in the comments. Bye for now.